we've also had some questions, and you've heard me say many times, litigation is a business tool. And there's 28 rules of litigation on my website. Again, for those of you, it's plain as day on my website. And the more successful kids that have, especially the ones that have attained the status of Hall of Fame, have used litigation as a business tool. Even if you don't use litigation, you have to be willing to use litigation. Because almost everybody that grows up is told lawyers are bad, which there's a lot of truth in that. And litigation is expensive, there's a lot of truth in that. But if you don't learn how to use litigation, then you're never going to, or I won't say never, the odds of you attaining generational wealth are greatly reduced. Now, it's bode poorly for me whenever I go to court, because the judge is normally asks me, or the opposing counsel normally asks me, Mr. Peña, and they put the book up, and it's an ebook on my website, and they said, are you familiar with this book? And I always say, I can't read that far, can you bring it closer about it? Anyway, and I said, yes, is this you, the same Dan Peña that wrote this? And I said, yes, but it's something worthwhile. It's something worthwhile. You know, you don't get involved in willy-nilly litigation, but things that you believe in, and sometimes the things that you believe in aren't necessarily over money. On YouTube, I've got stories, which I'm not going to elaborate now, where I've spent, $200,000-$300,000 over a $10, $20 item because it was the right thing to do. Again, connecting the dots, why is there no more mentorship program? And it's very simple. To me, it may not be simple to you. We tested, starting about 1.5 years, 2 years ago, reducing the mentor program from 1 year to 6 months, to 3 months, to 2 months, to 1 month, to 0 months. Because the numbers, the stats that we put together, there was no clear indication that whether you went through the mentor program or not had anything to do with attaining generational wealth. Now, did it have something to do with the second, third, fourth class citizens that are graduates of the QLA program? Yeah, a little. But remember, I'm here selfishly to put the biggest numbers on the board I can. So my legacy, will be in the tens of billions, as you've heard me say. Nobody that is coaching, teaching business courses today has created millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions, billions, tens of billions, hundreds of billions, and now $1 trillion. Nobody. It reduced my work effort probably 20, 30%, and it allowed me to do more seminars and get more people through the door and have more opportunity for kids to make generational wealth. That's why there's no more mentor program. But for those that started, the mentor program started the summer of 2010 and ended, roughly speaking, the summer of 2009, spring of 2009. I've been asked for the newspaper article and again the documentary, High Points in My Life. And we recently just put a high point, although I don't think we put this on the high points, that we're getting ready for an interview vis-a-vis a possible TV series. My experience and who I've been partners with, how was I partners with the Vatican, how was I partners with the CIA, etc. And in both of those cases, I was partners with them because we had been approached by the CIA and the Onassis group to head up a group that was going to go in and overthrow the Haitian government, baby Dr. Valier. And we set up quite like the Expendables with Mr. Stallone. We set up a group much bigger than his group. And we were going to invade Haiti. And at the last minute, the State Department pulled the plug and decided the collateral damage would be too great. For the preparation of that invasion of Haiti, I went to a anti-terrorist school in Powder Springs, Georgia, with CIA operatives, special forces, amongst others, State Department operatives, where you learn some of the tricks of the trade of invasion. And while we were there, mysteriously, one of the more dubious characters that was in the class of, I think there was 35 or 40 of us, wound up dead, floating in the lake that was adjacent to the school. And it was Mitchell Warbrail's school, for those of you who want to Google it. It was a lieutenant general, retired Lieutenant General Mitchell Warbrail, who, somehow the guy wound up dead, and the grand jury decided it was an accident. I'm not so sure it was an accident, but it was, it was an exciting time for me. And as I've said in the last filming of this series, I've continued to look for stuff to get in harm's way, because I have 3 regrets, and the top of my regret list is I'm a highly trained combat military officer that's never seen combat. So subsequent to me getting out of the military, even though I got out of the military on my own will, my own volition, the lure of wealth sucked me out of the military, and I don't mind saying, and sucked me into a different vortex. And so, but I've looked for, explosive things to do to fill that gap. And not the least of which, although I'm not sure it's in my notes here, how I got run over by a buffalo in Australia about 30 years ago, and ran it down in the jungle and killed it. But I've said it before, the thing that the kids don't take seriously enough, one of the daily points of regimen of the QLA process is, what did I do to scare myself today? And you guys don't think that it's worthwhile. 1, 2, you don't want to scare yourself. You want to stay in your comfort zone. Although, I don't want you to lose your life over it, but scaring yourself, because heretofore, as I've told you, you lived in a bubbled shell all your life. And one of the things that comes to fruition sooner than later, almost immediately with the QLA process, is you got to go out and put yourself on the line. And as I say, you're only 2,000 cold calls away from being a millionaire. 2,000. That's not leaving a message, not tweeting, not emailing, but talking to somebody on the other end of a phone. A principal that can make a decision, you're 2,000 calls away. And we've had several people validate those numbers. I don't need validation. And the example that we give in the seminar is we give one person that made 1,200 calls, one person that made 1,500 calls, and one person that made 1,800 calls before they were successful. The 1,800 cold calls is Bruce the Whipple. And it's not important who the 1,200 and the 1,500 cold calls were. And subsequently, in recent years, the average has been about between 1,400 and 1,700 calls before the first deal. And we're going to show some numbers at the end of this film. I've said before, your first deal using QLA with none of your money, successful deal, you're a short millionaire. And although the numbers that we produced only came up with $905,000 or $908,000, it's a short millionaire. But we'll get to that. I'm getting off track. Another thing that I'm questioned on whether it's true or not, and it is true, but again, getting out of my comfort zone. This was while I was in high school senior. We used to cut out of school. The school year is about 180 days long. My senior year in high school, I missed about 150 days. So I only went to school about 30 days. So I was normally shooting 9-ball at the local pool hall, which I got very proficient at. Or I was at Coffee Dan's, which used to be a bar in the valley that you could be served as a minor pretty easily. Or I was at the beach, Malibu Beach, with a case of beer or a keg of beer, with some of my illustrious buddies. And we were coming back on Malibu Canyon Road, for those of you that know that road. It's a famous road for movies that are made in the valley. And a guy named Joe Portero, who I believe is a retired doctor now, said, he was talking about some movie, and he said, we were talking about jumping out of the car. And Walt Bojack, Joe Portero, and myself, and Joe's cousin, which his name escapes me, was driving. And we were going about 45, 50 miles an hour, and unfortunately, Walt just passed, so I don't need him to verify it. I jumped out of the car into speeding traffic. Remember, I'm 17, 18 years old, bounced around, skidded, got my face all skinned up. By the grace of Allah, no cars crashed into each other, no cars went over the cliff. But the guys went back into the valley, into the bars and pool halls, and they said, if Peña can do it, these really in-shape athletes, it must be easy to jump out of fucking cars. Of course, I had no padding. I hit a tarmac like a ton of fucking bricks. And it's why, if you look at my website and you see that I've got metal parts all over, this is part of the reason. I would like to have said that I got most of those from playing professional football or playing some professional sport, but as we all know, I have next to no athletic ability. But yes, I did jump out of a car, and it didn't kill me. And it is true, that it does not kill you, makes you stronger, as Nietzsche said. Another thing that, again, you kids think that I must be delusional, or maybe I am delusional from getting my head hit on Malibu Canyon Road. There is a dam in Lake Malibu in the valley, in between the valley and the coastline. It's called Lake Malibu. And there's a dam there that's 67 feet high, and you can still Google it. And drunked up, no drugs, but drunked up on alcohol, we decided to jump off the dam. Now, I was almost always first to do these brainless acts of seemingly courage, but really stupidity. And what we didn't know is to get to the base of the cement of the dam, you had to be able to broad jump, or long jump as it's called now. I like it better when it's broad jump. About 16 feet, which isn't much when you got a running start, right? So I ran as hard as I could, and I jumped, and I landed on my back, but the top of my head skidded off the cement at the bottom, knocked myself unconscious. So I'm sinking to the bottom of the dam. Now, fortunately for me, one of the guys I was with was a guy named Bill Spurlock, who was on a swimming scholarship, I believe, at USC, and he was a lifeguard, and so, of course, I'm unconscious at the bottom of the dam. He did a Johnny Weissmuller type super dive pulled me out, gave me, life back into my lungs. And then all the other guys made the jump. They could long jump with a running start 16 feet. I couldn't. Again, as you know, I didn't have very next to no athletic ability. But this is the stuff I did, and I was always first. And in some way, some demented way in my back of my head, I thought that this was, making me tough like my dad was. Now, my dad only found out about all this shit when he was old. And he just shook his head, and he'd say a few unkind words to me about how fucking stupid I must have been. But as he would say, but the bottom line is you're still alive. And getting back to, I'm still alive. If I stayed in the military, I'm not sure what would have happened. I believe I would have been a great leader. But for some reason, I got pulled out. I got sucked into the vortex of business, making money, and I was very good at it. But what I found out, and the reason why I stopped doing it for myself, remember, I took $800, turned it into about $450 million in about 7.5, 8 years, which is a monumental 55 million%. We grew at 67,000% a year when oil went from $40 to less than $10, and 10,000 oil companies went out of business worldwide. Pretty phenomenal. But it was pretty easy for me. And so I wanted to do something else. And, that I didn't know that then. where they would remember my legacy. And that legacy was to teach you meatheads how to do it. Again, I've said in the seminars countless times, if I'd known how fucking hard it was to get you guys to grow a pair, to build self-esteem and self-confidence, I would have never started. Never, ever, ever. I grossly underestimated. Remember one of the things I say, never underestimate how wrong you can be. Again, because I was around people with self-esteem. I was around these alpha male guys from the Second World War and the Korean War. And it rubbed off. It rubbed off. Yet another thing of stupidity. By the way, I'm not recommending any of these things to you kids. And by the way, if you Google Lake Malibu, the dam, the water level in Lake Malibu is 40 feet lower than it was in 1963 when I jumped. If I jumped now, I'd have to long jump about 50 feet to get to the water's edge. But another thing we used to do, and this is when we were, drunked up, we would go and find railroad trestles in the valley where it was just emptiness underneath the railroad. And we would wait to hear the railroad, and then we would run on the railroad tracks across the open trestle. There's nothing below but rocks and shit to see if we could beat the train. I would always go first because I was slowest. And they'd give me about, the railroad trip about 300 meters. They'd give me a 100-meter head start. And I was just thinking, and these other guys that were pretty gifted athletes, they would pass me with about 20 or 30 meters to go, and they'd be on the other side yelling, come on, Danny, you can make it, you can make it, you can make it. And I'd dive at the last instant before I got run over by the train. Why? Again, this is not a recommendation for you. Well, 3 or 4 weeks later, the same guy, Bill Spurlock, that saved my life from Lake Malibu, but had more to drink than he had thought, and he didn't outrun the train. The train ran him down, cut him in half. Cut him in half. I alluded to this earlier, run over by the buffalo. I didn't know it was in the notes. Thank you, Kat. Kat is my alter ego. By the way, she corrects me. We were doing some numbers that we're going to show you later on. The honesty fact check. Is that right? They do fact checks when Biden says something or when Trump says something. Is it true or isn't it true? Well, Kat is my honesty fact check. In the early 90s, now this is not the buffalo I couldn't shoot. This is before the buffalo I couldn't shoot. I wanted, for those of you that have seen the movie Crocodile Dundee, there was a real Crocodile Dundee. His name was Barry Lees. He was a little guy, and he had a club foot. One foot was about this much shorter than the other, and he walked like this. And he didn't wear shoes, and his calluses on the bottom of his feet were real thick, like, an animal. And we went out into the outback of Australia, and I told him that I wanted a huge, big male bull buffalo to mount on my wall here at Guthrie, which is mounted here. And he said, well, okay, that's what we'll look for. And he said, it's about a 1.5 days walk, but we get there, and he's normally underneath this big tree with the roots hanging into the lake, where he'd scratch his back on it, okay, in the afternoon. Like a partial siesta, but he's not asleep. So we found him, and we were upwind from him. And he says, I'm going to throw pebbles on his back, and he's going to spin around. And there was a big log across that end of the lake, and he says he won't be able to get over that, and so he'll have to come run around the log and come up. And when he comes around, you'll be able to take him straight on from about 15, 20 yards, because I was hunted with a pistol. I started with a rifle. I was with a pistol by this time. Because it was too easy to hit him with a rifle. And so we threw the rocks on him. He looked up, he shook his head. And contrary, remember, never underestimate how wrong you can be. He jumped over the log like he was stepping over a pencil. And all of a sudden he's on me. Like from here to the camera. So quickly as I got, remember, I'm expecting him to run around over here. I got my .454 console handgun, which at that time was the largest handgun made. And as he ran over me, I got one shot off, hit him here. Now you'd think with any kind of luck, it'd go through his jaw and hit him in the brain. Well, buffaloes have small brains, kind of like some of you watching me today. And it missed his brain, and he kind of shook it off and ran off into the jungle. And I felt like a train had hit me, but 3,000 plus male buffalo is kind of like a train. So I shook it off, and I'm still dazed, and everything's kind of blurry, and I see him running off into the jungle, and I go to chase him. And one of the reasons I have an artificial hip, so the orthopedic guys say, is because it got busted up. So I'm limping after him, and in the back, Barry Lee's, Crocodile Dundee, is yelling at me, but I can't hear him. I don't know what he's yelling. And so as I get within about 20, 30 meters, I fire another shot. And I got, and then he gained, but after 3 or 4 shots, I wasn't sure I was hitting him, but he's slowing down. So I wasn't bright enough to think, well, what if the fucker just turns and charges again? And so I expended 1 in his chin, 4 at him, and he spins around, and like in the movies, he goes like this with his feet and charges. So we're 10 feet, and I pull the trigger, click, blank, no more bullets. The .454 console only carries 5. And what I didn't hear Crocodile Dundee yelling is, Dan, you're out of fucking bullets! Dan, you're out of fucking bullets! And he falls dead at my feet. Serendipity. So, otherwise I wouldn't be here to tell you this shit. Okay? And to tell you the QLA works. Now, I probably have 25 or 30, the dam, the trestle, the buffaloes kind of stories. And I've continued to do that until the last few years, where Sally basically forbids me to put my balls up on the line. But I continue to push the edges in the envelope, because it's easy to get satiated. I haven't had to work in 35 years. When you haven't had to work in 35 years, some of the college kids, the university kids ask me, how do you get up in the morning, Mr. Peña? What incentive do you have to get up in the morning, Mr. Peña? And my incentive the last 20 years is to bring as many of you meatheads, you sorry asses, across the goal line. And I've gotten very good at it. Not as good as I thought I was going to be 28 years ago, because my 28th anniversary was just a couple weeks ago. But I continue, and that's why doing something that makes you afraid on a daily basis is so important. But obviously, you don't have to go to, well, now you can't go to Australia because of Corona, but I mean, most of these things, jumping off the Malibu Dam back in the day cost nothing. Jumping out of a car on Malibu Canyon costs nothing. But it's important. It's to stretch. So you become comfortable being uncomfortable. Another, I can't even read the letters without laughing. This time I'm in Africa, and we're hunting. And there's a difference between buffalo in Australia and buffalo in Africa. One's a Cape buffalo, one's a water buffalo. The water buffaloes are Australia, the Cape buffaloes are Africa. We're in Africa hunting in Botswana. And we attract a big, huge buffalo who's also on the wall in the main hall of the castle for 4 or 5 hours. And we couldn't get upwind from him. But you want to get upwind because he can't smell you if you're downwind. Then he joins a herd of buffaloes. It's dusk. Now, the good news is buffaloes can't see very well. And they see even less well when it's dusk and it's getting dark, and they see even less well when they're a herd because of all the dust. So my hunter guy was Dougie Wright, a famous guy. He said the only way we were going to get that buffalo, he's in the herd now, is either by luck he comes wandering out, or you night crawl. You crawl on your hands and knees. Originally, I thought he was going to crawl on his hands and knees and usher him out, but he didn't. So I crawled on my hands and knees about 100 to 150 meters, and the buffalo are all standing around me, and until I found him, and it was pretty easy to see him because he was about this much higher than all the rest. And I stood up, shot it, hit him, and now about 100 to 150 buffaloes are going every fucking way, crazy, running all over. I'm trying to get out of the way. I hide behind a boulder, and then he sprints off into the hinterland. And if you go through the YouTube of me hunting in Africa, at night you'll see me finally catch up with a buffalo, and I shoot him, I think, once or twice more, kill him, and then I'm standing over the buffalo and I say some derogatory remarks. I think that it reminds me of my mother-in-law, but anyway. So I've just done a lot of stuff. Now, I don't have to prove myself anymore because I'm so used to being out of my comfort zone. Being out of my comfort zone is my comfort zone now. Being out of my comfort zone is my comfort zone. And and so I don't even think of it. And when I talk to the kids in the seminar, it's obvious to me that they think I'm fucking crazy. And to some of the kids, the combat veterans, the guys that have seen combat, are wondering how the fuck I'm alive.